Bitcoin once dominated the financial headlines, but not for all the right reasons, thanks to dozens of money laundering associations. But love it or hate it, ban it or embrace it, the Bitcoin lasted much longer than its critics predicted. Charlie Morris, who is editor of the Fleet Street newsletter and fund manager at Newscape, is here to shed more light on the not so mysterious Bitcoin. Hello to you, Charlie. So the Bitcoin is still here, going strong.
Bitcoin today is much bigger than it was than when it was in the news 2.5 years ago. The number of transactions has risen by multiples since that time. It's over 200,000 a day now. But the price is still below where it was. So it's about $450. It peaked at about $1,000 in late 13. I think at that time we had the hype. And so in a nutshell, I think that price was ahead of events 2.5 years ago. Today, events are way ahead of price. Okay. So it's quite contrarian now. It's a much quieter bull trend that's slowly gaining momentum. And I'm extremely bullish on the prospects for not just Bitcoin, but for the entire asset class that is evolving.
Mm-hmm. I think when I say it hasn't done as well as some thought, I'm talking about the people that thought that it was going to replace the US dollar as the reserve currency. Is that really ever a feasible idea?
That was a little bit ambitious to happen in a short space of time. I think it's been a big learning curve for us all about what's possible. I would briefly mention, I don't consider Bitcoin to be a currency so much as a digital asset. Okay. So think of it more like gold, but with a utility, because you can do all these interesting things with it. And obviously there's the blockchain behind it, which is a new kind of database which has taken the world by storm. And people everywhere are beginning to realize that they can cut costs in the financial system and have better security and more efficiency by using this blockchain technology. And of course it was developed by Bitcoin.
And what is the future then of Bitcoin? Do you think other digital currencies are going to come into play, and more possibly understandable ones? Because it's not just the money laundering aspect to this, it's also the image. People just don't understand it.
Sure. There are about 650 or more alternatives to Bitcoin out there. Most of them are worthless, and the reason they're worthless is because they have no network. So you've got a whole load of Bitcoins. There are 15.5 billion Bitcoins in the world. They're valuable because people use them. Another network that's not valuable is simply because people don't use it. Imagine if you had WhatsApp and you and I were the only people messaging each other. It wouldn't be worth 18 billion to Facebook. But the fact that there are a lot of users, hundreds of millions of users, makes it incredibly valuable because they've built a network. Bitcoin has created that network, and that's why it's valuable. That network is growing, and that's why the price is rising.
Okay, so the future of Bitcoin then, where can it go?
I think this whole open source blockchain, let's just quickly touch that. Open and closed, or public and private. So a public blockchain is like Bitcoin. Anyone can download the software, anyone can come into the network and use it. A private blockchain is something the banks are using to make their back offices more efficient. Yeah. Now, in that case, you can't download the software because, for security reasons, they limit who can and who can't play around with the stuff behind the scenes. So, in the open source community, I think the development, the progress in the technologies that are coming forward, it's much faster growth in terms of new ideas being born every day, new companies that are coming around it, new types of coin, new applications, and so I just think that it's going to be a new asset class. So the moment we talk about currencies and commodities and bonds and equities, I think digital assets is actually a massive asset class in the making today. Mm-hmm. In the same way, in the mid-1990s, we had internet stocks. None of them made any money. The price went through the roof. And it was kind of silly in some ways, but actually then it was real 20 years later or 15 years later. And we said, these things are hugely profitable when we need them, and we couldn't live without the internet today. And yet you couldn't make a serious case in the mid to late 90s as to why these things were trading so richly. I think it's the same for cryptocurrencies or digital assets. It's an asset class that's under construction as we speak.
Mm-hmm. Well, you like it, obviously, but a lot of people hate it. Why?
Well, they don't understand it. I think if they took the time to understand it better...
Are they threatened by it as well? I'm talking about
governments.
Governments of countries. It's been banned in several.
Sure. So if you go to the prosperity.com, with the list all the countries by sort of various factors such as openness and economic health and education and so on. And the countries at the top, which would be Singapore and Norway and Switzerland and Britain and America, embrace it. The countries at the bottom ban it. I won't name them, but you know who they are. And so free countries have no problem with it. They want to regulate the touch points, of course. And so the exchanges, for example, where you buy and sell bitcoins or other cryptocurrencies, there's this KYC requirement, as there is for any other financial transaction. So I've got no problem with that. I don't see it as this big dirty space. I see it as a new frontier of technology and computing.
New frontier, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. That's Charlie Morris there talking to us today about the mysterious, or not so mysterious now, Bitcoin.
What if there's a technological advancement so powerful that it transforms the very basic pillars of our society? A technology which fundamentally influences the way that our economy, governance systems, and businesses function, and could change our conceptual understanding of trade, ownership, and trust. This technology already exists, and it's called cryptocurrency. People often think of Bitcoin as only virtual money or a transaction system. But if you look closer, you'll see that the monetary aspect is just the tip of the iceberg. That's because Bitcoin is a groundbreaking internet technology for which money is merely one of the possible applications. Money exists to facilitate trade. Through the centuries, trade has become incredibly complex. Everyone trades with everyone worldwide. Trade is recorded in bookkeeping, and this information is often isolated and closed to the public. For this reason, we use third parties and middlemen we trust to facilitate and approve our transactions. Think of governments, banks, accountants, notaries, and the paper money in your wallet. We call these trusted third parties. This brings us to the essence of Bitcoin. Bitcoin software enables a network of computers to maintain a collective bookkeeping via the internet. This bookkeeping is neither closed nor in control of one party. Rather, it is public and available in one digital ledger which is fully distributed across the network. We call this the blockchain. In the blockchain, all transactions are logged, including information on the time, date, participants, and amount of every single transaction. Each node in the network owns a full copy of the blockchain. On the basis of complicated, state-of-the-art mathematical principles, the transactions are verified by the so-called Bitcoin miners, who maintain the ledger. The mathematical principles also ensure that these nodes automatically and continuously agree about the current state of the ledger and every transaction in it. If anyone attempts to corrupt a transaction, the nodes will not arrive at a consensus, and hence will refuse to incorporate the transaction in the blockchain. So every transaction is public, and thousands of nodes unanimously agree that a transaction has occurred on date X at time Y. It's almost like there's a notary present at every transaction. This way, everyone has access to a shared single source of truth. This is why we can always trust the blockchain. The ledger doesn't care whether a Bitcoin represents a certain amount of euros or dollars, or anything else of value, or property for that matter. Users can decide for themselves what a unit of Bitcoin represents. A Bitcoin is divisible in 100 million units, and each unit is both individually identifiable and programmable. This means that users can assign properties to each unit. Users can program a unit to represent a eurocent, or a share in a company, a kilowatt-hour of energy, or a digital certificate of ownership. Because of this, Bitcoin is much more than simply money and payments. A Bitcoin can represent many kinds of property: 1,000 barrels of oil, award credits, or a vote during elections, for example. Moreover, Bitcoin allows us to make our currency smarter and to automize our cash and money flows. Imagine a healthcare allowance in dollars or euros that can only be used to pay for healthcare at certified parties. In this case, whether someone actually follows the rules is no longer verified in the bureaucratic process afterwards. You simply program these rules into the money. Ergo, compliancy up front. The unit can even be programmed in such a way that it will automatically return to the provider if the receiver doesn't use it after a certain amount of time. This way, the provider can ensure that allowances are not hoarded. A company can control its spending in the same way, by programming budgets for salaries, machinery, materials, and maintenance so that the respective money is specified and cannot be spent on other things. Automizing such matters leads to a considerable decrease in bureaucracy, which saves accountants, controllers, and the organization in general an incredible amount of time. The programmable open character of Bitcoin allows us to completely rebuild and innovate our financial sector and our administrative processes, make them more efficient and transparent, and significantly decrease bureaucracy. But there's more. In an Internet of Things, our economy will be dealing with machines that actively participate in the economic traffic. In fact, they're already here. Think of a vending machine or drones delivering packages. These machines are unfamiliar with the concept of trust, but Bitcoin is not. Because of Bitcoin, the drone can be 100% certain that it will deliver the package to the right recipient and know for sure that it's been paid for. And we can program the vending machine in such a way that it will automatically keep track of its supplies, order new supplies from the supplier, and pay for them automatically. Of course, you'll understand that this is only the beginning. Internet technology is disruptive and breaks the status quo. It opens markets and breaks the positions of middlemen all the time. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have caused a paradigm shift. It's time to explore this new technology constructively and critically, and openly discuss potential applications.